Thank you, Tom. So we have our final retiree. Hi, Barb. I haven't seen. Barb Roosevelt is coming up to speak for Steve Silverman. And Steve retired last year, and we're so happy you could be back so we could honor you this year through everything.
Never go last, especially after Tom Borgen. I wanted to first say something about former students that I'm seeing around here, and I know that we have all been a success because I see them grown up and looking great, and I'm so happy to see all of them. So I want a chance to say hello to all of you in person before you go. Don't leave without doing that. Okay, a popular bumper sticker reads, "He who dies with the most toys wins." That's not the bumper sticker my friend Steve would want on his car. His would say, "He who dies with the most knowledge, the closest friends, and the gift of creativity wins." In the 30 years I have known Steve, he has been a teacher, an author, a business owner, a carpenter, an inventor, a website developer, a podcaster, a tailor, he once made his own ties for school, a cook, an antiques enthusiast. I'm 11 years older than he is, so that explains his enthusiasm for antiques. A good friend, a husband, a hermit crab expert, in case you need help on that, and a tech wizard. He's also an all-around great guy. Like all teachers, Steve didn't teach for 30 years in order to wind up with the most toys. He became a teacher to help kids discover who they are and to teach them to love learning. Not just learning about science either, learning about everything. He's the type of teacher Steinbeck had in mind when he wrote, and Steve didn't read Steinbeck because he doesn't like fiction, but he probably saw this quote at some point or another. "I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist, and that there are as few great teachers as there are any other great artists. Teaching might even be the greatest of the arts, since the medium is the human mind and spirit." Well, Steve probably never read that quote. I believe he is the rare teacher Steinbeck would call great. Steve wanted his classroom to be a place where bored teens would learn in new and more exciting ways through lesson plans that were entertaining as well as intellectually challenging. He punctuated the dreaded lecture-based lessons with human interest stories like Mike the Headless Chicken, which, if you worked with Steve, you heard that story several times in your career. And what student could resist the story of a chicken whose head was cut off yet, who lived for how many more years, Steve?
About 16 months.
About 16 months. Kids loved it. He electrocuted pickles, which made my room stink. He set his tie on fire every year. He hung actual bowling balls from the ceiling in his room, which made me cringe when I walked in there thinking that perhaps one would fall off. He made gases respond to music. No one could ever claim to be bored when they walked into Steve Silverman's classroom. Steve was good to his students, too. As someone, and I'm sharing a story he told me that I don't know if he ever told anyone else, but Steve was bullied when he was a student by a gym teacher who was very cruel to him, and he always remembered that. Hold on. My ears are talking to me. They must be hooked up to something else. As someone who was tormented by an especially cruel gym teacher in junior high, he understood the importance of kindness and acceptance. He endured those years of abuse. He never even told his parents about them, but he remembered it when he had his own students. He had a special place in his heart for any student who needed affirmation and encouragement, those who didn't quite fit in, who needed a special connection, or who simply needed a place to call their own, were always welcome in Steve's classroom. You'll have to excuse me a minute while I switch pages here. I guess I'm not nimble and quick anymore. They could find a place in Steve's classroom both before and after school, their safe place in a school environment that was not always welcoming. Room 129, though, was a haven for anyone, anytime. Each year, Steve even taught kids how to tie a tie. Boys, of course, because girls didn't need to know that. Maybe now they do. In recognition of Steve's compassion, students fondly honored him in a yearly tribute called Steve Silverman Day. The participants dressed in dark-colored pants, an Oxford shirt, and a tie, because that's what Steve wore every day to school for most of his career. He's always lived a life of integrity, and he is a physical model that students have loved and respected. Steve isn't perfect, but he's pretty darn close. He doesn't drink, smoke, do drugs, or swear. Sorry, Tom Morgan. Unless you count the rare use of, say, swear words that would count in the 1930s, like I think I've heard him use hell or damn a couple times, but very, very rarely. And the closest thing to a dirty joke you'd ever get from Steve is, geologists make the bedrock, which is something that won't get him on Saturday Night Live anytime soon. He's always lived a life of integrity, making him the perfect role model for teenagers, especially impressionable young men who see role models on television and from Hollywood, and they need to see something different, like Steve. During our years commuting with one another on a daily basis, Steve and I got to know one another very well. In our early years, I learned he was a creature of habit who loved routines. Each day for lunch, he would make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He'd have a carrot, he'd have a pickle, he'd bring orange juice, and sometimes, to change things up, he'd bring a cookie or a bag of chips. Each Sunday night, he would bag all of those items, he would make all of his sandwiches, he would have the sandwiches in the freezer, and he'd have them ready to go each day. He'd also have his clothes laid out, which were color coordinated by a friend, because Steve is colorblind. So he could have everything grabbed from his closet, put on the bed, and he'd be out the door because Steve never wanted to be late for anything. He is the most punctual man I know. As a result, let me see, I already said that, sorry. Steve is also a tech wizard who, no joke, and I'm serious about this, he was instrumental in getting a lot of the bugs out of the internet, the computerized system that we wound up putting in Chatham, because he was one of the first persons to explore it. He was investigating the World Wide Web when it was in its infancy, and he was dabbling in making a website of his own, which is how he became a published author of 3 books. It also led him to podcasting later. He has had a relationship with technology that far surpasses anything that I have ever done, and believe me, that's not saying much because I can't do much of anything with technology. But the thing that surprises me about Steve, he can do anything with technology, but he can't dial a phone. Steve is phone phobic. From the time I have known him, he has never wanted to make a single phone call. And that became kind of a problem when he was looking for a relationship. So he would ask other people, me included, to help find him girlfriends. And sometimes after work, I would take him shopping with me, and I'd see a sales clerk who looked cute or was very kind, and I'd say, hey, here's my friend Steve. Are you seeing anybody? And he'd get all embarrassed, but he didn't really mind. He kind of enjoyed it. I even set him up once with my sister-in-law's niece, who is, let's just say she is very boisterous and gregarious, and he took one look at her and fled. Not seriously, but it was pretty close. He was waiting around for Mary Jane. And how did he meet Mary Jane? Steve, I'm going to let you tell that story quickly.
Thanks, Barb. By the way, I'm not colorblind. I just can't match things. Real quickly, I had a student named Joe Nolet. Anybody remember Joe? Yeah, Joe didn't do very well in my 9th grade earth science class, and he actually did graduate from high school, but he was a great guy, and he loved me as a teacher. And then, you know, he didn't pass 9th grade, but then he didn't like his classes in 10th grade, so he'd come by every couple of weeks and say hello, and just try and not go to class, and just hang out with me. And he kept saying, I'm gonna find you the perfect woman. And he kept doing this every couple of weeks. Comes 11th grade, this is now he's almost 2 years out of my class, and he walks in, he goes, I found the perfect woman for you. And I'm like, go away. And he's like, no, 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 she's really, really pretty. And I'm thinking, you know, he's 16 years old, Pam Anderson is what, you know, his version of pretty is. So anyway, I just said, go away. I was joking with him, you know, but I said, go away. And he just kept coming back and doing that over and over again. He walks in right before Thanksgiving, he goes, here's your email. I told her you would email her. So I took it home, and I'm like, oh, I mean, I just set it aside for a week or two. And it's like, I'm not dating him, but I'll email her. And oh, when he handed me the email, he said, I want to be invited to the wedding. And he was that sure we were a match for each other. And this is my wife right here. And he was the first person we invited to the wedding. So.
And he was Steve's best man.
No, my brother was.
Oh, I'm sorry. And he was just one of the other groomsmen at the wedding.
Yeah, he gave a speech.
He gave a speech. I remember it clearly, but not all of it, obviously. There are a lot of other stories I could tell you about Steve, but I know our time is limited, and everybody has people they want to meet and greet here because we don't see one another that often since it's a once-a-year occasion. So I just want to say, Steve, have a happy retirement. I know you'll never be bored. There are many more inventions that you can create, more books to write, more places to explore, more projects to begin, and more people to help in your retirement years. May you continue to be inspired by everyone and everything around you, and thank you for being my friend.
Okay, I asked to go last because it might be a little messy. Anyway, I don't have a long speech, so don't expect anything poetic or anything like that. And topping Tom is kind of difficult. I want to thank Barb. I asked her to do this last year, and of course then everything got canceled, and she agreed. She actually didn't know there was a retirement banquet until I questioned if she was actually speaking for me, and then she found out. Anyway, I'm going to grab a few things out. I came with props, so just hold on a second. Hard to videotape yourself. Anyway, they gave me 2 days last year in May to go clean out my classroom after 30 years of collecting stuff. And being a science teacher, I had a lot of things I had to get out of there. I ended up going into about the third day, and I remember leaving. And it was kind of weird leaving the building because it was dark in the building. All the administrators were gone. There's only a few people. I handed my keys to Dave Wheeler, and I just drove away. And it wasn't quite how I expected to end my career. But as I was packing things up, there's all these things, you accumulate that are obsolete and you're going to throw out. So I just put them in this box here. How do you know when it's time to retire? You ready? Oh, one thing. Just pass one of these to everybody. There's not enough to go around, but they were left over. And don't set them off until I say, okay? just pass them along the table to the next person, into the next table. And don't be like the students and just set them off before I tell you to do so. Okay. Okay. How do you know it's time to retire? When you actually know what this is. Anybody know what this is? 8-track tape. Okay. Any remember a floppy disk that actually floppy? That flop. And this is from an Apple IIe computer, which was state of the art when I started teaching. We had an entire room of them that they ended up. I don't know where they went. They're in some landfill somewhere, I'm sure. You know what this is? Anybody remember this? Okay. For those of you too young, you put chalk into this and you draw the lines. It's a staff for music, but all the teachers use it to make lines, particularly for the young kids, right, when you're trying to teach them to write. This will, I have other things, I'm not going to go through them all. Now the only people who will get this are the people who work in the district, but when you're going through your files and you find the 9th grade lab from a guy named Jeff Artist, okay? Yes, I had him in 9th grade and 12th, and now he's back teaching at the district, so. Okay, so what did I have on my list here? Now I should tell you, I only planned on staying in Chatham for 1 year. I didn't want the job. I remember I came for the interview, and by the way, I actually found my cover letter that I sent in at the time. And to make it feel dated, I had to drive to SUNY New Paltz to find a computer because nobody owned a computer, and I did it on a dot matrix printer, which would date. You have to be old enough to know what that is. But anyway, I sent it in. It was only a half-time position. I didn't intend on taking the job. They made it a full-time job, and I remember when Brian Howard, who was the principal at the time, called me and said I had the job. I said okay, of course. Then I hung up the phone. I told my mom, I don't want this job. It's in the middle of nowhere, and I was living in the Catskills with my parents, and it was the middle of nowhere. And my mom said, take the job, and if you're dating someone in a year, stay, and if you're not, go. And I always joked that I was dating somebody, which I was, and that's the reason I stayed. But the real reason was there was a recession going on, and they had laid off like 1 out of every 5 teachers in the district. I was lucky enough, if I got my physics certification, Frank Shannon was retiring. If I got my physics certification, I could stay. And that's why I'm here. Well, up until last year, I stayed for the 30 years. I just want to thank everybody. I'm not just talking about all the staff I've worked with, not all the teachers, but the support staff, the aides in the classroom, the custodial staff, the people in the office. Every person works together in a school to make it run. It doesn't matter what goes on in my classroom. I need all that support, and I really do thank everybody for that. I should say I do miss the students a lot. I thought I'd really miss teaching, but I don't. I mean, after what's going on this year, I'm actually pretty happy that I retired when I did. I should mention my brother Gary is sitting here, and he retired from teaching the same exact day I did. I'm happy I retired. He went right back to work, and he's been subbing ever since. So anyway, I do want to wish all the retirees luck. And in retirement, I'm 1 year into it, and I can tell you it's really great. I'm kind of sad that Patrice and Jim, who I work with, aren't here. I mean, to think that Patrice is actually retiring, that's pretty amazing. I mean, they're both wonderful people, but Patrice is like, she is like a legend in the school, and I'm going to miss both of them. I'll see them both in retirement, but it's just kind of amazing that she finally has. Okay, so have the poppers gone around? Okay, so I'm going to end with one last demo. This is actually one of the last demos I did in physics, and I was trying to show the kids, there's one in here somewhere. I was trying to, now a lot of you, I'm going to maybe talk a little over your head, but I hope not. Basically, there are electrons that theoretically go around the nucleus. And if you excite them, you add energy, they move to higher orbitals, but they're unstable, and they come crashing down and they release light. You see this in fluorescent bulbs and wintergreen lifesavers if you bite down on them. So one day, I just came up with this idea to do this. So does everybody have their popper? Okay. I'm going to use a bigger one, okay? So on the count of 3, in celebration of everybody who has retired and is about to retire, here we go. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Anyway, thanks for everything for everybody, and I hope everybody has a great summer. It was a really tough school year for many of you, so I hope you enjoy yourself. Thanks.
So that ends the toast and speech part. We have a lot of dessert out there. They held off on the food a little longer, so if you're hungry, scramble up now to grab it. Thank you, Birch Hill, and all the staff. We appreciate it. So, yes, you, bartender, definitely. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We had 114 people say they would attend, so that really shows retirees how much you're loved and will be missed. So we hope you have a great weekend and enjoy your retirement. Okay, woo.